So, Chidera, can you enable sharing of screen so I can share my screen with everyone?
Okay. How is that done again?
If you go to settings or security, you should.
I've done this before. Now I can't find it. Where is it? Hold
It's just,
on.
I think it's just beside participants.
Just a participant. It's on my end. Oh, share screen. Oh, hold on.
All
Wait,
right.
advanced sharing options. Okay, who can share? Participants. Who can start sharing when someone else is sharing? Someone else. Okay, I think I have. Try.
Cool. So I can share my screen. Yep. Excellent.
Okay.
Wait, I need to be sure what I'm actually sharing with you guys.
All right. Okay.
Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, I can. So I believe.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Does anyone want to say anything, or do you want me to give it a start?
Yeah, I think you can just start. You could just make the presentation full screen, please.
Okay. So do you want to record?
Yeah, I've already hit the record button. It's recording.
Okay, excellent.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Oluwatobi Fajano. If you're Nigerian, you can just call me Toby. Everyone can call me Toby. If you call me Oluwatobi, it'll be very, very weird. So please call me Toby. I will do a presentation today on picking a research topic. I'm going to make this presentation as quickly as possible so we can have loads of questions. Okay, so just a bit about myself, actually. So I heard someone saying that they moved into IT from a different degree. I actually did move into IT from law, which is actually very weird. But that is usually not a problem. So I moved into IT from law. I did law, went to law school, qualified lawyer in Nigeria. And then I started my master's in forensics. And then I started my PhD in cybersecurity. And then I was lucky enough to be given a lecturer role in cybersecurity at the University of Portsmouth. So currently that is what I am doing. Okay, so what we'll be doing today would be very simple. I'm going to talk about the research process, like what exactly does it mean, because it's extremely important. And then we talk about the why, what, how, and I'll give some examples. And then we talk about the title of the dissertation in the first place. Okay, so the first thing is you have a project idea, and you might not have a project idea at this stage. It's absolutely fine if you don't have any idea. That's the point of this presentation or for this talk, to basically help you start thinking of ideas or how you can get ideas. Okay, so before you start, there's several things you actually really need to consider. The first one is actually, what are your university requirements? What exactly has your university said about your dissertation? So this is important because different universities have different systems. Some universities have certain rules for dissertations. So in some of the courses I manage, the students are only allowed to do engineering projects. So that means they have to build something or do some sort of very rigorous experiment. In some other departments, they might say they allow study projects, they might allow experimental projects, but you need to look for your university requirements. Your university should inform you of what requirements you need to have for that project. The second thing you really need to think about is the relevance of the project. So if you're studying business and then you wanted to develop a blockchain application, that might be innovative, but that might not be very relevant to your degree. So you want to think about how relevant is this to my degree. Very important is feasibility. Okay, so I'm going to be making some jokes along the way, and some of these jokes are actually real life stories. So when I started my PhD and they asked me what I wanted to do, I was like, I wanted to solve a really big problem and I wanted to solve all of it once and for all. So I found out that wasn't possible. And all I needed to actually do was take the big problem and just solve a small aspect of that problem. So feasibility is important because sometimes you might pick a topic that is just extremely impossible. You might not have the time to do it. It might be too complex for you as well. You might not have the necessary skill. So you want to think about feasibility, the complexity of that project, how long it's going to take you. Do you have the skill and do you have the resources to actually complete that project? So this is extremely important. Don't take on something that you might not be able to finish. When you start thinking about the title, when you start thinking about the idea, you also need to think about the feasibility. If it's not feasible, you need to actually eliminate the idea. Um, Lastly, very important is ethics. Okay, so if you're doing a project on how to make a bomb, if you that might be innovative, you might create a new bomb, but that might not be ethical. So you need to consult with your department and make sure like whatever title you want to pick or what project or what dissertation is ethical. So you make sure you meet the ethical criteria. In several universities, you're not allowed to start working on your idea or working on your project until you complete your ethics form. So this is extremely important because it might mean that you do a fantastic project, and because you failed your ethics, you might end up failing the project or getting a substantial amount of your marks deducted. So consider the requirements, consider the feasibility, consider the relevance, consider what resources you have to do the project, and then also consider the ethics of it. Okay, so the first thing is a dissertation or any research you do is basically a story, right? So what do I mean by story? It starts with a problem. There's always a problem that you're trying to solve. If there's no problem, you can't have a dissertation title, right? So your dissertation title must start with a problem. There should be existing solutions. Sometimes you might say, I am the first to do this. Most times it's actually not true. There might be a solution, maybe not exactly doing that exact thing, but there will be existing solutions in that area. I mean, we're not in the early century, so there's quite a lot that has been done in research. So you need to actually look at that problem and look at it from what are the existing solutions that we have, right? And then you propose a solution, but then think of how you collect your data, think of how you do the analysis, and think of how you evaluate that. So evaluation just simply means comparing what you've done against existing solutions, and then you conclude. Without these things, you don't have a title, you don't have a topic, you don't have a dissertation. A dissertation cannot be complete if you do not start with the problem, and if you don't tell us what the existing solutions are, discuss the proposed solution, collect some sort of data. So data collection is extremely important. If you have a project that you're not collecting data for, then that would probably lose you a substantial amount of marks. Okay, so you need to make sure that you have some sort of data that you can collect, and you can analyze that data. You can evaluate to compare with different other solutions, and then you can conclude. So all of these things are extremely important. So if you have a title or if you have an idea, make sure that make sure that you have a research story basically that starts with a problem, ends with a solution being evaluated. Okay, so how do you actually start? Okay, so enough of the theory. So how do you actually start? So where do you start? Start by asking yourself the question, why did I do my degree? So I know there are quite a lot of people who do degrees for different reasons. Some people do it because they're just forced to do it. Some people do it for promotion. Some people do it for job prospects. If you're doing a graduate degree, which I just believe most people here are, you might be doing it to advance your career or maybe to start a business afterwards. So if you ask yourself, why did I do my degree? It's important because that would help you um, like answer, basically get a project title, because your project or your dissertation or your thesis should be related to the reason why you did the degree. So something else you could also do aside from why you did the degree is that you can look at what are my strengths, what are my skills, what knowledge do I have. So if I have really good programming skills, I might just decide to use that skill in my project. If I have good skills doing some kind of research, or if I know a particular area really, really well, that would be a good area to pick for your dissertation topic. Guys, please feel free to ask me questions along the way. I might not be able to see your questions, but I will respond as soon as I can see them. Okay, and feel free to interrupt me as well if you want to. Okay, so something else you need to look out for is what is your interest, right? So sometimes this interest might mean that you know about the area, and it could also mean that you do not know much about the area. So um, a dissertation could be a good opportunity to learn a new skill. I learned quite a lot when I did my master's dissertation. It could also be a good opportunity to learn about a particular area. So if you think about what interests you have, then you can begin to develop some really, really vague or broad ideas around it. I put another point about good grades. So people sometimes try to pick their projects so you can get good grades. It's a good reason, but it should never be a priority. The reason is because I've seen several students who have picked certain topics to get good grades, but end up not getting good grades. And then it goes back to this slide. So you might pick a topic like researching that has to do with secondary research. Most secondary research projects do not do well because good research has to collect some sort of data in the process. You have to collect data. There has to be existing solutions. There has to be a problem. So if I was doing my research on the CP community, if I was going to do my dissertation on the CP community and the effect it has on international students, if I'm not collecting any data, I have to collect data somehow. That could mean me interviewing Chidera. It could mean sending out surveys, but I have to collect data. So when you're thinking of your title, when you're thinking of the topic to pick, always think about how am I going to collect the data? How am I going to analyze it? Because without that, you don't have a good project. Okay, so you can also think about prospective employment, and this is extremely important. So something I always advise everyone to do is if you know you want to get a job after you finish, what you need to think about is what exactly are the skills that are required for that job. So what I mean is go onto the website, look for several job applications, like look not no not job applications, sorry, look for several job offers or job postings, and then look at the skills that are required for each of those roles. And then you could possibly use your dissertation as a way to either strengthen your position for that role. So for example, if I realize that um, so I'm in cybersecurity, so I'm gonna give a lot of cybersecurity examples. But if I realize that I wanted to become an incident response analyst, right? One thing I will do is I would go to different websites. I'll go to Barclays website. I'll go to different banks, and I'll look for what are the requirements for this role. So I might find out in the process that one of the requirements is being able to configure a firewall, right? So I could then decide to do my project on configuring a firewall because it would help me gain the skill that is required for that job, but it also sell me in a better position because I've actually done a full dissertation on firewalls, right? So one very good way to actually determine what your project would be to look at what exactly do I want to do with this degree, right? So if I want to use it to get employment, then I should look at what the requirements of that job is or are. Okay, in the end of it, no matter where you start from, no matter the ideas you have, all projects. So I've noticed this across a few universities. I do have colleagues in other universities where we actually discuss about projects. So across several universities in the UK, most dissertations should either be novel or should be very challenging, right? Or not very challenging, rather, or should be challenging. So the novelty or the originality is dependent on what level you are. So if you're a master student, the level of originality or the level of challenge that is necessary for your project might be slightly higher than someone who is undergraduate. Okay, so you might want to think about how novel is my idea, how original is it, and what that means is have I compared it again to the previous solutions? Are there any existing solutions that exist? And how does mine differ? So, for example, if I say I was going to do my project on developing a firewall or building a firewall. I need to look at existing firewalls that exist, and I need to see what is the problem with these firewalls and how could I possibly solve the problem. Okay, so I know we all want a good project. We want it to be novel, original, and we want it to be challenging. But you need to also go back and think about the feasibility again. So despite the fact that you want something original and you want something challenging, you need to think about the feasibility. So you need to do some sort of risk analysis and ask yourself, how can I complete this project? What skills do I need? What resources do I need? Does this meet within the ethics? So you need to keep coming back to these points before you pick your topic. But the topic has to be either novel or and challenging. Okay, so challenging means that there's some level of difficulty to it. So sometimes a student might repeat something that's already been done, but that thing might be difficult. That is always, or that is usually allowed in most universities in the UK. Okay, so where exactly do you start? You can start with existing ideas. So one way is to ask your university. University might have a database for ideas. University of Portsmouth, we do have databases in different departments. In your university library site, you might see some ideas about dissertations. You could also look at some external sites. Different degrees or different topics might have different sites. So for example, I know for forensics and cybersecurity, um, websites like Forensic Mag actually suggest dissertation topics for students. You could also look at previous dissertations to see what people have done in the past. Okay, so that's one way you can get ideas to see what have people done in the past, and how could I do something different, or what can I do from this. Something else that is extremely important is familiarizing yourself with publications. Okay, so read, and as much as possible, read published papers, peer-reviewed papers, conference papers, journals in your field. They will definitely give you ideas on projects, because you can see how they've collected the data, and you can see how feasible it is for you to actually repeat the same process. Also, just having a chat with your lecturers is extremely important. Most lecturers have dissertation ideas, they have thesis topics. So having a chat with a couple of your lecturers might be extremely useful, not just for getting a topic, but because you also want to get a supervisor you can work with. So even just having a chat with different lecturers could give you an idea of who you can potentially work with and who you could have a smooth journey with, basically. And then begin to identify several research questions. So from previous dissertations, from publications, from existing ideas, from having a chat with your lecturers, basically have a notebook and just write down all of your ideas, right? So write all your ideas down, and what you want to do is systematically evaluate your options. I know that sounds like a lot of words, but what I basically mean is take all of the topics and then go back to all of these things I've said. So, can I tell a story with this? If you cannot tell a story with this topic, maybe because there is no problem, or maybe because you don't have a method for data collection, it might not be a really good idea to go on with that topic. Also, you want to think about all of these points again, extremely important. So the complexity, the feasibility, and and the rest of it. Okay. So after you systematically evaluate your options, you can begin to eliminate those options one after the other, right? Until you get dissertation topics. And when you eliminate those options, still have discussions with your lecturers, because you want a potential supervisor who would actually be really interested in that topic. So they could guide you, they could possibly help you refine your topic, or they could possibly help you with a new topic. Or if they find that you're interested in a particular area, they might actually have a readily available topic for you to actually do. Okay? So think about all of these ideas, write them down, systematically evaluate them, discuss with your lecturers. If you have people in that industry, you can also discuss with them as well. Okay? And the last point I was going to make is about Bloom's taxonomy. So when you finally, and this is an extremely important point, when you finally decide to pick a topic, So let's say I decided to say, okay, I'm going to develop a new firewall for a particular system, or I'm going to develop a security system of some sort. It's extremely important the way you actually phrase your title, um, because in academia, we have what we call the Bloom's taxonomy. And Bloom's taxonomy is just basically how we use words at different levels. So what does that mean? At the lowest level, we want people to remember stuff, right? So we want people to be able to identify. So for example, if I was teaching this in a primary school student, I basically just want them to identify everything I've said, to be able to remember, basically, to be able to cram and pour it back to me, right? But as you move up, you begin to move up to understanding better, and then you begin to move up to applying things, to analyzing things, and then to evaluating it, and then finally creating something new. So this is extremely important because depending on the level you are, if you are at level 7, which is masters or at graduate level, you should be looking at analyzing and above. You should be looking at analyzing, evaluating, and creating, right? So if you created a dissertation topic, and I said, and my topic was identifying the best firewalls, that is at the lowest level of academic brilliance, right? You're just able to identify stuff. So the way you frame your title is actually very important. And that's why you see a lot of words like analyze and evaluate or systematically or systemize or apply at graduate school level. Okay. So when you're framing your topic, do not use, if you Google Bloom's taxonomy, you would see quite a lot of words that fall into these different categories. Do not pick titles that are at the very lowest level, right? Because that would not help you. I mean, it wouldn't convey the message that you're actually trying to evaluate or you're actually trying to create something. That would convey a message that you're just trying to recall what has been written in the textbooks or in previous papers. Okay? So I'm going to summarize what I've said again. When you're picking a topic, how do you start, right? Or before you start, think about these things. So think about university requirements. What exactly has my university said I can do for my dissertation? What are the limits, right? Think about the ethics, right? So you don't want to say, I'm doing a project to create a bomb, even though that might be innovative, that might not be ethical. So this happens a lot with in areas like law or business. If you're going to do a so if you thought about answering a research question, and the way you could answer your research question was by sending out surveys, you might want to think about the ethics. Okay, you might also want to think about the feasibility. How many people are likely to respond to these surveys? How am I going to send my surveys out? How am I going to make sure that people actually fill it properly? So you need to think about all of these things before you start, before you even think about the topic. So basically, to pick a topic, you can get a lot of vague ideas from different sources. You can have a chat with your lecturers. You can look at existing publications, look at previous dissertations, write all of these ideas down, right? And then begin to systematically eliminate the options that don't meet up with these criteria we've discussed, right? So think about the risk. Think about what project would help me sell myself best to my employer, but at the same time, what project can I actually finish? Several students struggle to finish their project because they've picked something they can actually do, but it's actually very difficult or time consuming. Okay? So think about the risks a lot when you're doing your dissertation. And then also, when you finally pick your title, apply Bloom's taxonomy to it, right? So think about evaluating something, think about creating something, think about analyzing something. Apply, understand, remember should be left for people um, in secondary schools.
Okay.
Okay, so if you have, I'm going to leave room for questions. So if you have questions, please ask them now. I've also put my email address in the chat. If you wanted to have a further chat with me, I know there was someone who mentioned that he's into cybersecurity. So if you wanted to have a chat about projects you could possibly do, I do have some ideas in cybersecurity and
What's happening?
I'm
Hold
not sure what
on.
this is, but yeah, that's it for now. So does anyone have any questions? Oh yeah, you should have questions actually.
Yeah, so Toby, thank you so much. That was very helpful. So the way we're going to do it now, like it's either you ask in the chat, but because we're not a lot, I feel like you can just go ahead and ask your question, like unmute yourself and ask your question. So this is our question time. So if you've got any question, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask. And we'll try to answer.
Okay. Thank you so much, Toby.
You're welcome.
I'm also doing cybersecurity, and it's been quite difficult in selecting or choosing a topic, and quite a lot of research back. And you made mention of collecting data, and I keep asking myself, how do I collect data? Because I'm supposed to turn in a paper on smart homes and energy consumption. So I've been thinking, how do I collect this data? Do I need to start locating smart homes and to get their energy usage and all of that forth and back? I don't know. What should I just leave it and move on to something else?
So that paper, is it for your project or is it just a coursework?
It's a coursework.
Okay, so if it's a coursework, you don't need to collect a substantial amount of data. And what I mean is you don't need to. So, for example, I had a student working exactly on smart homes, and he was from Bahrain. So what he did, and that was for his project. So what he did was he sent out surveys because in Bahrain they have quite a lot of people with smart homes. So he went back home and he was able to give out that survey to several people. Um, to collect that data. But if you're doing it as a coursework, what you can do is you need to look out for secondary data sets. So there might be data sets available online on smart homes. There might be some information from, for example, gov.uk or from the Office of National Statistics. So Office of National Statistics has quite a lot of data, which some of that data is actually not interpreted or analyzed. So you can actually go ahead to analyze it. Um, Yeah, so but if you're doing your coursework, you don't need to collect substantial amount of data. You just need to make sure that you collect data from other sources aside from yourself because our opinions don't count. And then you need to make sure that you analyze that data in a way that shows some sort of novelty or some sort of critical analysis.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. But if you're going to do smart homes for your project, so that smart homes could be a really complicated project. So I had a student who built a smart home from the scratch, which was amazing. But he did have the skill to do that, and he's been working with Arduinos and Raspberry Pis, so he was able to actually quickly do that. I had another student who knew he didn't have the skills to build a smart home, and so what he did instead was send out surveys to a lot of people and actually find out the security bias or the security, how people feel about security of smart homes. And so that project wasn't on the actual security, but more on how people feel about it, if that makes sense. So you make sure that your research question that you pick, that the method for your data collection actually helps you with that research question. So I had someone else who picked something to do with smart homes, but something different, and basically did surveys, but those surveys did not answer the research question because if you ask people what they feel about security, that is just their sentiment. That doesn't actually answer what the security of that thing actually is. So you need to think about things like that. Does my data collection method actually help me answer my research question?
Okay, that makes quite quite a lot of sense.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. I have a question too.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Thanks so much, Toby. Please, I would like to know what is the relationship between my dissertation and my future job? Is there any relationship?
Very good question. So
My question is three. Maybe I should
it's actually a
just.
very good question, because so before I started my PhD, I thought about applying for a lot of jobs. I got a lot of interviews. All of the interviews I got, they would ask you, what did you do for your dissertation? Right? And it's a question that they want to actually know the kind of person you are. Aside from the topic itself, they want to know, did you pick something challenging? Did you pick something in that area? Did you get any new skills? Because doing a dissertation is actually like managing a real life project, right? You have to manage yourself, you have to manage your supervisor, you have to manage your time. So they want to see all of those skills, how you applied all of those non-technical skills in a technical area. Sometimes they also want to see how technical you are. So if you want to apply for really technical roles, so for example, if you want to apply for a threat intelligence analyst, or an incident responder, or if you want to apply for a business analyst, for example, doing your dissertation and showing that in your dissertation you've used a tool like SPSS, for example, to actually, and you collected some data and you're able to analyze it using SPSS, and then you can show them like samples of your work, would actually show that you're capable with that skill, if that makes sense. So you definitely ask questions relating to your dissertation, but doing a dissertation and learning a new skill also gives you the opportunity to learn something, and also gives you the opportunity to put that on your CV, right? So there's certain things that on my CV that actually, I know them now more, but I actually learned them during my master's dissertation. And so that's taken me really, really far in my career. So what you do for your dissertation could be very important.
Okay, that's good. Secondly, how is a dissertation defense is in UK?
So that depends on the university. Different universities have different ways of going about it. So in my department, what we do is students submit their dissertations at graduate level. They have some sort of presentation they need to give. A lot of universities would allocate some percentage of the marks to that presentation. And so, for example, 10%, and you'll be asked a lot of questions. If you give a presentation about what you've done, and then you'll be asked questions. Also, most universities in the UK would have two markers. And so what that means is you would have your supervisor as one marker, and then you have another member of staff as a second marker or a moderator. And sometimes you need to actually demonstrate your work or give a demo of your work to your moderator, because the moderator doesn't know exactly what you've done. So for example, if you are building a firewall, it's not enough to just write that firewall in your report. You need to actually demonstrate how that firewall works, or show that it actually works, um, to your moderator and your supervisor. The reason for this is for two reasons. First reason is to ensure that you've done it by yourself. And the second reason is for them to ask you questions and for them to just basically get a better idea of what you're doing.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sorry. All right. My question actually, I have a topic in mind, and I was looking into IoT devices. I chose a topic, but kind of like I was discussing with someone else, and he said the topic is kind of like I would say too big, that I should kind of like make it specific. And the topic I chose was security challenges of IoT devices and the improvement of security in IoT devices. So it was like that the topic is so vague that what am I talking about? Is it security challenges or the improvement of the security? And if I'm going to do the improvement that he will suggest, I should do improvement of security of IoT devices. But how am I going to improve that security? That's so I'm kind of like confused.
Okay, good, very good question actually. So one thing is, when you pick a topic like that, so you remember we have this kind of graph, and we have some other things here as well. But when you pick a topic, that even the new topic you have, the improvement as well, in my opinion, is still very vague. One thing you can do is you can read um, papers in that area. You would not find a paper that is vague except it's a textbook. So you find papers in specific areas. And the good thing about those publications is when you find a good publication, they would have a related work section, right? So they will have some sort of related work that shows other people's publications, and you can then read those other papers. So when you see the related work and you read that and you read a couple of papers, maybe 2 or 3, you would have a better idea of how to streamline that topic with IoT devices. So how do you intend to collect your data?
That's the issue. I was having in mind I will use a survey for it, but now I also as you were talking about all these things, I was
Yep.
reasoning, okay, if I'm going to collect survey, who are the people that are going to answer my questions?
Okay, so personally, I
Necessary.
hate surveys. So I just use that as an example. Like I hate surveys. The reason I hate surveys is because when it's done, it's not always done right. Surveys are actually more difficult than in quote difficult projects. The reason is because you need to meet up with the demography. You need to make sure you have the right demography, the right spread. You need to make sure your questions are very relevant. And with surveys, you need to have a short amount of questions. If you send me a survey, if you send me a survey, I wouldn't answer, to be honest. But if you send most people a survey with more than 10 questions, they probably would just stop at some point or ignore it. A survey should be, a participant should be able to fill that survey in 5 or 10 minutes. So basically, what I'm saying is a survey could be a difficult thing. If you are doing something like IoT, one thing you find out is when you go on Google Scholar and you search for just type in IoT security. One thing you easily find with IoT security is there are quite a lot of devices that are connected on the internet and they're very vulnerable. And anyone can actually just connect to them. There are several devices, there are several IP cameras, for example, with default usernames and passwords. So if I know the IP address, I can just connect to it. And there are tools like Shodan as well, right? So you can get if you have so your university should have access to Shodan. Do you know about Shodan?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can use a tool like Shodan, and it can even make your project more specific. So rather than saying all of the IoT devices, which means everything, so everything connected to the internet is an IoT device. It could be a
Yeah.
fridge, it could be a camera, it could be a laptop.
Yeah.
You could then use a tool like Shodan to pick either a specific vulnerability. So maybe you can pick a new vulnerability. So one thing you can easily do with Shodan is you can pick a vulnerability that just came out this year, right?
Yeah.
You can search on Shodan for that vulnerability, and then you can see how many computers or how many IP addresses or how many servers are actually vulnerable to that. Then you can also test things like, okay, how exactly would I attack this vulnerability? How would I defend this vulnerability? So that way you can do some experiments and compare the different attacks. And then you can then evaluate different attacks to say, this attack might work in this situation. This attack might be better. This attack might be cheaper. And then you can also evaluate the defenses as well. So you can use a tool like Shodan to collect a lot of data, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So I'd rather you use Shodan to go for search for a specific vulnerability, maybe this year or last year, or a particular device. And when you search for that, then look at how much data you can get from Shodan. If you sign up to Shodan with your student account, you should be able to get a evaluation license or a student license. So you can then look at that and then say, how much data can I collect from this? And I think this also applies to other things as well. So if you're doing business, for example, something you might consider is, let's say, for example, you wanted to analyze the effect of female CFOs on, I don't know, on accounts or something. You could easily collect data online about all the CFOs in the UK or all the CSOs in the SP 500, for example. And then you could easily look at account statements, and then you could just manually collect that data, and then you could use a tool like SPSS, which would give you several ways of analyzing that data to give you to answer your question of whether or not female CFOs have a negative or positive effect on account statements, for example, or on fraud in companies. So you need to think, but the thing is, once you read previous publications, you would see that people have actually done this already. So that's why it's very important to familiarize yourself with existing publications.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you so much, Toby. So, to everyone, if you have a question, you can ask, or if you don't want to ask, you can type it in. But I feel like we're a very small group, so it's okay to just ask if you want to. We should be wrapping up in a couple more minutes, depending on the number of questions we have, but we should be wrapping up by 8. And this is 7:44. So I don't know if anyone has any other questions, or even if you want to ask me something, you can. Or if you want to ask Toby, you can. So yeah, I don't know. Any more questions, please?
Okay. Toby, please.
Yes.
Can I email you for some dissertation topics?
Of course. Yeah.
Okay.
He's shooting shots. Nice. Please.
My
Okay,
emails might be really sorry, Chida. What were you saying?
Go on.
So my emails might be really full, so I might not respond to you in 3 days.
I wanted to ask that. I was trying to say, what's the best way to sort of reach you aside from email? I don't know if it's.
I don't know, to be honest. I'm trying to delete social media, so.
Sorry. Okay, don't worry. I have other questions,
Yeah.
maybe regarding cybersecurity, but I don't know. Maybe I just feel like maybe I should email you about it also.
Yeah, send me an email. I'll respond to you. I promise.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Toby, you'll get around to the emails.
Yes. Wait. Sorry, is this for the people here or for the people who are going to listen to the recording? If you listen to this recording, don't send me an email. I'm just joking.
Point. I think it's for the people here. They are the ones that will have access, I think, to that. Okay, so before we go on, before any more questions, I just made a post on Instagram on the page about what's happening. If you could just help me comment, like just drop a comment there if you're here. Just help me, because we're 10 here, or 9 rather. You could help me drop a comment on the post just so that other people that want to attend next week's own, they'll be aware that it was worthwhile or something. Just help me drop a comment, please, on the post at the CP Community is the latest post there. Just help me drop a comment. Thank you.
Okay, no worries.
Thank you. Yeah, so any more questions, please? Toby is here. I don't say use him, no. Ask him questions. You've muted your mic, Toby.
So right now, the issue I'm currently having is fitting into the university system here, because Nigeria is just the project. I don't know. Here it is called dissertation. Nigeria is called project. And when you say you're doing your project, everybody's
it's actually called project here as well, to be honest. Like, in the past, like, it used to be called project. In fact, we had this debate in my department because we didn't know whether to call it. So for the undergrads, we have a day where they actually showcase the project. So we had a very strong debate in the meeting on whether to call it project day, thesis day, research day, and things like that. So it doesn't really matter. Yeah. But go on. You said you were saying something about the difference in culture.
Okay. So what difference do we have between the project we do in Nigeria and project we do here? I know the first difference is that we outsource the project.
Why did you say that?
So I just need to know those.
Okay, let me start by saying what is the difference. One of the main differences that I think, or one of the main mistakes that international students make, is that they don't realize how much access they actually have to the lecturers and how much they can actually demand for stuff. So the first difference is you don't know all of that, and then you're struggling by yourself. You can actually just email your lecturers and say, I'm struggling, or I need the topic, or do you have most lecturers have topics. So that is one way to quickly, and if you like working with lecture, and if it's a topic you can do, then that's easy. In terms of the project, the first thing is referencing. So make sure you reference everything you say. I think several universities use Harvard APA style, but please check your university requirements again, but make sure you reference properly. And what does that mean? When you start writing, don't leave all your references to the last minute, because you would be in a bad situation. So you want to do your referencing as you go, and make sure you reference peer-reviewed sources. But if you do your referencing well, and if you follow all of the instructions, and you just basically have a story like this, you would have a good dissertation. So in terms of the culture differences, most of the universities are very diverse, and have a diverse, or starting to have a diverse range of lecturers as well. So
Yeah, in addition to that, I feel like, to be honest, the difference is not much in terms of structure. Like they are kind of like structured same way. But yeah, one major difference that you have to actually do the work here. But in Nigeria, there's no a lot of emphasis on writing in your own words and not like plagiarism. Of course, there are some schools that are checky, but it's not, that's not like that, those are the exceptions, not the rule back home. But here you actually have to do the work, you have to write in your own words, you have to rephrase. But in terms of structure, overall it's similar, like having your introduction, your literature review, your methodology is same thing. So if you did research in your undergrad, you should be fairly fine. The only difference here is that you have to do the work. Yeah.
Okay. I think that's okay. And I think another difference is that you're always on cold feet in Nigeria with your lecturer.
Yeah, you can't approach them at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, but here, whatever it is, email your lecturers. They are there. We're paying them to be there. We're paying people like Toby to be there and work. Ask them questions, please.
yeah,
Okay. Hello.
yeah.
Yeah.
Please,
Hi.
I would still appreciate it if Toby could still talk on the referencing again, because I think he said something on it. And on the originality of the work, must it be 100%?
Okay, I'll start with the originality. It doesn't have to be 100%. So it depends on. So when you discuss with your supervisor, he will be able to advise you more on how on it. Don't think about. So going back to feasibility. Okay, let me actually tell you how my master's project went horrible, because I picked a project that was very complex, maybe unethical, very complex, very time consuming, loads of skills. I could do it, but I didn't get the data I needed, right? Was very original. And basically my project was, so you know this car remotes, I could basically still open most car doors with my project. But it so at first a lot of the lecturers were like, I'm not supervising this project. The person who actually decided to supervise it did not give me his car remote to do any testing. It was like my wife would kill me if if anything happens to my car. So in terms of originality, don't try to go way overboard. Sometimes even if your project is not original, if it just shows that you put in some effort in this, that there's been some challenge in doing this work. So for example, several students in computing might say they're designing a website. That is not original. You're not the first to design a website. However, there might be some sort of challenge. They want to see how challenging it was. Did you learn anything new? I mean, by learning new skills, I award student marks. Most lecturers would award students marks if they know that you didn't know what you were doing, and now you've actually learned the skill. Even if what you've done is something everyone has done, that would actually help your grades. But don't think about the grades. Think about what you want to do with the project. Like, do I want to use to get a job or something?
Okay. Okay.
Second, what was the second question? Or the
My,
first question?
about the first one was the second one was about originality, about referencing. Yes.
Yes. Okay, so about referencing, the university should educate you about referencing. Most universities would have some sort of department somewhere, maybe within your library or maybe within your academic skills unit, that will deal with referencing. But they will also have quite a lot of material on referencing. I think this is something that a lot of people struggle with, especially international students at graduate school, because you're not really used to the rigorousness of the referencing here. But basically, let me try and summarize it. No one cares about your opinion, right? So even as I'm giving this presentation, this is not my opinion. I have some opinions that are weird. Nobody cares about your opinion. What they care about is fact, right? So after you've given the fact, for everything you say, you must have a reference for it. Now, you can only give your opinions when it is based on facts. So those facts must be referenced. So, for example, if I'm going to say here, I mean, there's no way that it's written that people were engaging and everyone was nice today. But for my analysis, I can say everyone has been nice and everyone was good. But it's based on the fact that I can see the chat, so I can reference the chat, I can reference the number of participants, I can reference the number of people that have spoken. So you give facts, and then based on those facts, you give facts, reference those facts, and based on those facts, you can have like some sort of your own opinion. But don't say your own opinion straight away because nobody cares about your opinion.
Okay, thank you.
And also, when you're referencing, do not reference Wikipedia, please. So Wikipedia is the biggest no-no in academia. If you reference Wikipedia, you're probably going to get the lowest mark you can get. Also, do not reference websites. So the reason why you don't reference Wikipedia or websites is because anyone can literally edit it. Like I can literally create up a website and put up this presentation and just put it up. Doesn't mean that this presentation is fact, right? Because anyone can create a website and just do anything. So you need to reference peer-reviewed publications first. So that might be a conference paper, that might be a journal. And when you can't find these, you can then reference things like textbooks. You can reference things like white papers. So you might do certain projects, maybe in business, for example. You might not find a single publication on it, but you might find a white paper from a well-known company, or you might find an article from a well-known company. Where you cannot find peer-reviewed sources, then you can use sources like that. But don't use a source from a random website and just cite it.
Yeah, Toby, just to that's news for me. Or maybe it's because I don't know, this is cybersecurity standard, but my course was in social sciences, okay? We cited websites, but the websites we cited, I think they were like will I say respected sites because for social sciences, some of the things we were doing had to do with current affairs. And there's a lot of news. So we have to cite like news. Okay, so this happened on this day, this happened on this day, and that's why this is happening now. Do you get? So we have to cite websites. So I don't know. I feel like maybe there's an exception to that.
Yeah, exactly. So the thing is, yeah, that's the exception. So the thing is, cite peer reviewed first. Obviously, if you're looking for news articles, you're not really expecting that to be in peer reviewed papers. Doesn't make any sense. So you then look. So when you can't find peer reviewed sources should be your first choice. And then when you can find peer-reviewed sources, then you can look at websites. But you need to look at websites, like you said, that are well-known. So for example, even in my PhD, I cite Microsoft a lot because Microsoft is probably doing better than all the researchers in that area. So I have to cite them a lot. In fact, a lot of product I'm using is from Microsoft. So if I cite Microsoft, no one should have a problem with that. However, if I cited Toby Fajano website.ng. Like who's that? So yep.
Okay, hey, there's this question I wanted to ask, just skipped my head. And it was like, yeah, okay, this is the question. Not to assume that everybody knows what peer-reviewed means, right? So what's a peer-reviewed paper?
Okay, so peer review comes from two words. You have peers and you have review, right? So you're my peer, I just give you my article to read and you review it. And that's a peer review, basically. So a peer-reviewed publication would usually have some sort of structured process where you have like people who actually take what I've written. So I can't just write a paper. Like people who are experts in my area would actually review to see if what I'm doing is correct, see if what I've done is accurate, and see if I'm not misleading people.
So where do you find them, and how do you know this paper? Like if I'm just on the internet and I see an article, how do I know it's peer reviewed? Or how do I find them?
Good question. So if it's a website, there's a very likelihood that it's not peer reviewed. If you go to Google Scholar and you search for a publication, if you look, most of the standard publishers like IEEE, I mean, this is computing, or Scopus, IEEE, ACM, Nature, would already peer reviewed. So they wouldn't have publications that are not peer reviewed. So if you get it from a standard repository, that is peer reviewed.
Okay.
If you get it from Google Scholar, you can look at the publication or you can look at the conference to see if it is good. There's something very important to note actually. Citations are good, but even when you cite a peer-reviewed paper, it could also be a bad thing. If that peer-reviewed paper is a rogue journal, so we've got what we call rogue journals. I'm just going to type this, just in case you didn't hear me properly. So we've got something called rogue journals. Can you all see my chat?
Did you just send something now?
Yes. So
Yeah,
I just typed
rogue.
in
I've
Yeah,
seen it.
yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. So we've got what we call rogue journals. Like basically, I can just set up a business and say people should publish papers, and I'll collect some money from them. But it's not really a proper journal, so you want to be very careful citing those kind of papers. One way to know really good papers, first of all, if it comes from a standard repository like Nature, it's good, probably, not necessarily. However, you look at things like the number of citations, right? So if a paper is well cited and you're doing a topic in that area, you need to actually mention that in your project. That is extremely important. So if it's well cited, it means everyone else respects that paper to actually include it in their publication. So that is a good way of knowing peer-reviewed papers. But always look out for the standard repositories in your field, or papers that are well cited, basically.
And there's a question in the chat. Can one cite someone's project that you got from the internet? Because I got one for the essay. When you say, I think this is Collins, Hygienus, when you say you got the project from the internet, is it like an article? Is it like an article in an academic journal? Or is it like a student's assignment that was uploaded on one website like that? I need for that clarification. I don't know, Toby, do you have anything to say? Can you see the
Yeah, you can cite a former student project, like that's well allowed. So I have students who actually continue from previous students comes to the project, so they actually have to cite the previous project.
Okay.
So it's allowed. However, be careful of plagiarism. Though you can cite it, you can't copy it. So one thing with citing projects or with citing publications is don't get too excited about citing them. So don't just have in your work, you just keep citing everything. You need to have some of your own critical opinion, some of your own critical thinking as well. Just citing other people's work, like don't pick a whole paragraph and cite it. You need to paraphrase that paragraph, but still reference that paper. So the fact that you want to cite a paper, don't do quotes except it's extremely important. So except Nelson Mandela has said something about South Africa, don't quote him in your work, like a full paragraph. Like I could have just read Nelson Mandela's work than reading yours. So don't quote too much. Paraphrase the work, but still cite the previous paper.
Okay.
Does everyone know what I mean by paraphrase?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think, yeah, we should know. We know what paraphrase is.
No, because people usually ask me, how do I go about paraphrasing?
Yeah, I feel
somebody
like
else's work?
that could be a different section. We'll talk
Yep.
about that off camera.
I think that there are some apps or online websites that even paraphrase some things for you. But
Wow.
even if they paraphrase it for you, you still need to change some things because most times it doesn't really make sense. Doesn't really.
Okay.
Yeah, it will lose the context of what you're saying, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Some of them.
Okay. Don't use any of those apps. So I can't spell Manchester well. I spelled as Manchester. But there's something called Manchester Phrase Bank.
Okay.
And it basically is a phrase bank that has a lot of words you can use to start your project or you can use for writing. So you can basically use that phrase bank to sort of, it'll give you ideas of how to say certain things, right? Or how to cite people's work.
So we just Google it.
Bank. Pardon?
We just look it up on the internet.
Yes, just look it up on the internet. It's phrasebank.manchester.ac.uk.
Phrasebank.manchester.ac.
I think so.
Okay, let me just type a Manchester Phrase Bank.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's something related to football.
No, it's Manchester.
.ac.uk. I've seen it.
Yeah. So that's like one of the largest, or actually the largest free phrase banks in the world.
Being critical. Introducing.
I'm just going to stop sharing my screen quickly.
Oh,
still
so
answering the question.
these are like phrases you can use. The main limitation of the however is I don't understand. Is that how it works? Oh, however, this method of analysis, I don't get like what are we to copy and not copy? Can you share your screen on the Manchester Bank? If you don't
Okay.
mind, Toby.
Yeah, we will.
Okay, so just a quick one for somebody
Yes.
who was asking about referencing. You can check out Mandely. It's very quick and fast for referencing.
Yeah. I
You mean
think
Mendeley?
I use
Yeah,
it
mentally.
mentally. I used it last semester. It was very, very good.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Mendeley is very good. Yep. I use Mendeley as well. Um. Okay, so this is Manchester Phrase Bank, and basically what it says is if I was blank, like if I wanted to start writing and I was blank, I'll just start from introducing my work, and you can read. But the good thing is I can see examples. If I wanted to start by saying how important this topic is, I can just click on this, and this just gives me some ideas of how to start writing.
Oh.
So if you find a paper and you're not sure how to paraphrase it or how to change the word, coming back to this Manchester Phrase Bank. So, for example, if they've described certain methods or something like that, or you want to compare the sources, so for example, if I was going to paraphrase X, right, I can start by saying X-based methods provide that. I'm not going to say exactly what X said because that would really annoy your reader who's probably marking your work. So you don't want to do that. You want to do it this way. So this would give you ideas of how, or really practical examples of how you can actually paraphrase it. So for example, if I read a paper and they did a case study, I'll just say the case study was used, chosen, adopted to blah 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 blah. Does that make sense?
Okay, I think I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very
Plus,
nice.
Mm.
This is what your lecturers use basically.
That's good. Wow. Okay. Toby, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we've actually come to the max. It's supposed to be an hour. This is an hour plus some minutes. So thank you so much. Hopefully we'll have you some other time. I've actually learned something too. I didn't know about this Manchester phrase work, so that's the plus. Thank you so much. And to everyone who joined, thank you so much for your time. Please do not forget to drop a comment on the post on Instagram. It's very important that you help me drop like a comment of how helpful this has been, just so that other people can see it and join next week's session. So please. Samira is asking, yes, you'll get a copy of the recording. Once I hit stop recording, I'll send the copy within the week. I'll send that across. You have that. So yeah, thank you so much, everybody. It's been lovely spending the evening here. Thank you. Thank you so much, Toby.
Thank you.